Tsavo East, midday. A lion cub lies on its side near the bend of a dry footpath, chest fluttering with shallow, uneven breaths. The dust around its mouth is stirred only by the tremble of its own effort to breathe. One paw is tucked awkwardly beneath its chest, the other stretched toward nothing. There is no pride nearby, no movement in the thorn scrub, only the heat, the stillness, and the unmistakable pattern of human boot prints pressed deep into the cracked earth beside it. A few meters away, two bent metal snares gleam in the sun. One is closed, rusted tight, with a tuft of pale fur caught in its loop. The other is half-sprung, bent inwards and streaked with blood. Drag marks fan out from it, trailing in the direction of the cub's body. Its left hind leg is scraped raw, not broken, but bleeding slowly into the dust. The wound is minor, but the silence is not. McKenna, one of the reserve's rangers, is first to arrive. She steps with care, following the prints without speaking. Her shadow passes over the cub's flank. It does not stir. She crouches low, not touching it, only observing the slow rise and fall of its ribs. Its gums are pale, eyes closed. No sign of alertness. She lifts her radio, voice quiet. Cub found, alone, breathing, but barely. No sign of adults. There are no vultures above, no scent of death. But the earth says what the air does not. This happened recently. Poachers don't always kill. Sometimes they take, and sometimes they leave behind the too small, the too weak, the ones that won't fetch a price. McKenna signals the second ranger approaching behind her. Bring the wrap, and water. The cub makes a sound then, not a cry, but a tight, shivering moan, barely formed. It tries to lift its head and fails. The attempt costs it. Its flank trembles harder. If it moves too much, it will collapse. If it stays too long under this sun, it will not survive. McKenna moves closer, kneeling into the sand. Her hands are bare. She doesn't speak again. Slowly, she places the folded cloth across the cub's back, shielding it from direct heat. The cub flinches at the contact. Not violently, not from fear, just confusion. Its body recognizes pressure but not safety. The cub's breathing shallows further. Its body is in defense mode, conserving, shutting down. If they wait too long, it will slip. The water bottle is opened with care. McKenna dips her fingers first, touching the dampness to the cub's lips. It doesn't lick, but its mouth twitches. Again and again. Then a flick of the tongue. Instinct, faint but present. It's enough. The second ranger unrolls the sling, and together they begin to lift. The cub's frame is light, underfed. The muscles under the fur have softened from dehydration. Its tail hangs limp. McKenna holds the cub against her chest, one hand steady under its rib cage, keeping it level. "Breathe," she murmurs once, more for rhythm than comfort. The cub shivers, not from the cold, from fatigue, from stress, from the unknown. She begins walking toward the outpost, slow and deliberate. The cub does not struggle, it cannot. If they stop now, it might never open its eyes again. Every step is time. Every delay is a risk. There's no sign of a lioness, no tracks but their own, no blood trail from others. If the cub was a part of a larger pride, they've long since moved on, or scattered in the wake of poachers. If no adult returns, this cub will have no teacher, no protection, no language. But first, it needs to live. Dust swirls up behind them as they move. The sling swings softly with each step. The cub doesn't cry again. It simply endures. At the edge of the brush, a weaver bird calls once, sharp and alone. The cub lies beneath a canvas sheet in the shaded corner of the outpost's small enclosure. Its body, though warmer now, remains slack. Head resting sideways, limbs tucked without tension. Its breaths are spaced far apart, each one dragging just slightly longer than the last. The gash along its hind leg is shallow, the edges already dry. No swelling, no infection. It wasn't the wound that nearly ended it. It was time, heat, and the hours of collapse that followed. No one can say how long it had been lying there before Makina found it. She kneels beside it again, as she had the day before, moving slowly, not out of hesitation, but care. Her hands press gently beneath the rib cage, fingers checking for pulse and moisture, both faint. The cub flinches once, not from pain, but from touch it no longer recognizes. There's no resistance, no struggle. The signs that would mean strength. Its body is not fighting yet. It is still surviving, still conserving. Makina leans in closer and brushes a drop of water from its whiskers. The tip of its tongue catches it, weakly, by instinct. The others watch from a distance, 2 rangers and a vet tech who had driven through the night. They speak in low voices about fluids, temperature, rehydration cycles. But Makina doesn't look away. She has seen the shift before, the quiet border between holding on and letting go. She's learned to see it in the skin around the mouth, the droop of the ear, the twitch in the paw. A small cooler sits open beside her. Inside, a pouch of warmed saline. The needle is narrow, suited for size. When the vet tech steps forward, Makina nods once. No restraint is needed. The cub does not move. Its shoulder lifts slightly with the pinch, then settles. A few drops of blood appear. But the fluid begins to run, slow and steady, into the thin vein beneath the skin. Hydration. Life, drop by drop. Makina watches the skin above the eye, the thinnest, most honest part. For change. The slightest twitch. The flick of a whisker. Nothing yet. She adjusts the sling beside the cub's flank and lays a second cloth across its paws. The fur is cleaner now. Brushed gently with soft towels and soaked gauze, the earth stains have faded, but not the scent of the bush. This cub is still wild, still unclaimed by human hands, even as those hands fight to keep it breathing. Outside the enclosure, the wind rises, lifting dust across the open plain. A bird call rings out, not sharp, not near. The cub's ears do not respond. Its senses are dulled. Survival takes more than instinct now. It takes endurance. If it wakes, it must relearn the ground beneath it. If it wakes, it will be alone. Makina shifts her weight, knees pressed into the straw. Her voice is low, barely audible. Stay with me. She says it once, not as comfortable, as an instruction, as a necessity. The cub twitches, a muscle spasm, or response. It's hard to say. The IV continues, the breath remains. By evening, its paw curls faintly inward, claws flexing, then still. A sign, not of strength, but of life. It's enough for now. Makina leans back, resting her elbows on her knees. One ranger checks the vitals. The vet adjusts the drip. No one speaks loudly. The cub sleeps, but not peacefully. That is not the goal. Rest is not healing. Rest is survival. And until its body chooses to rise, nothing is guaranteed. If it stands, it might live. If it falters, they will try again. But for now, the only certainty is breath. Light, shallow, real. By the 4th day, the cub could lift its head without trembling. Its eyes, once half closed and clouded with fatigue, tracked slow movement. Each breath came deeper now. Not strong, not steady, but no longer fighting to rise. Makina noted each small shift in a weathered notebook. First swallow, first response to sound, the tentative twitch of a tail at the scent of warmed milk. They fed it in shallow bowls and gauze-soaked strips. I drank. Not enough, but more than nothing. It was a male. Young enough that his first teeth had only begun to show through the gum line. His body bore no other injuries. No signs of rough handling, no bite wounds from predators. The gash near his leg was the only mark, and even that had crusted into a dry, pink edge beneath the ointment. The cub had not been hunted. He had been left. Each dawn, McKenna walked the stretch beyond the outpost's fence, past the ridge where poacher traps were often found, and waited. She listened. She watched. But there were no calls. No patting of a restless pride in the distance. No warning scent from a mother returning to claim what was hers. The wind carried nothing. Only grass moving. Only silence. Inside the enclosure the cub paced. Not with purpose, not yet, but with instinct waking beneath his ribs. He sniffed the edges of the pen, brushed his face against the canvas flap. He did not cry out. He did not seem afraid. But he paused often. Ears up, then flat, then uncertain again. That afternoon, the vet returned from a drive east of the gorge. She had found no fresh tracks, no new kills, no drag marks, no drag signs of movement from Pride. Not a single print bigger than his, she said. Nothing at all. The possibility no one wanted to speak aloud took root. Cubs are not usually separated. Not unless there is panic, a chase, a sudden threat, or something more final. Poachers don't kill adult lionesses for meat. They kill for trade. If the mother was taken, there would be no search. No scent left for him to follow. No direction to walk toward. The cub licked his paw and lay against the warmed stone slab, watching the sky through the mesh. McKenna placed a cloth beside him and sat cross-legged, just near enough to offer presence without pressure. He blinked slowly, then turned his head away. He was not bonding. He was enduring. By dusk, the staff stopped speaking in hopeful guesses. No lioness had returned. No growl at the fence. No rustling beyond the trees. The cub was no longer missing. He had simply been left behind. They would monitor him longer, see if strength continued to build, see if his limbs grew steadier with each sunrise, but there would be no early release. Not until the truth was clear. If he were reintroduced too soon without Pride, he would not survive. Not at this age, not alone. McKenna recorded the final note of the day. Cautious progress, no external response. Will reassess in 72 hours. She tapped the pen once and closed the book. In the enclosure, the cub shifted. He exhaled a low, tired sound. Neither pain nor rest. Somewhere between. If no lion came, he would be raised alone. If no Pride returned, they would carry that weight. Humans who could not replace what he needed most. He had survived the trap. He had outlived the heat. But if no one followed, he would walk forward without a language, without a name. Just after nightfall, the wind shifted. It came low from the east, pressing through the fever trees and brushing dry leaves against the fence line. McKenna stood at the rear gate, scanning the outer stretch where dust gathered in natural ridges. The cub had eaten earlier, a slow, distracted meal, followed by a nap beside the warming slab. He was steady on his feet now, though still favoring the leg with the healed gash. His body had strength again, but his ears twitched too often, as if listening for something just outside his understanding. McKenna squinted at the soil near the boundary. There, pressed into the packed earth, were tracks that hadn't been there that morning. Larger than the cub's. Too wide for hyenas. The front pads were heavy, splayed slightly at the toe. Lion, one, maybe two. Not old, no more than a few hours judging by the depth. But no sound had come with them. No call, no growl. Just silent circling, and then disappearance into the grass. She walked the line again the next morning. The prints had faded slightly, but she marked them. That night she stayed out past her usual rounds. The cub was asleep inside, paws twitching in a dream that no one could understand. McKenna crouched by the fence, wrapped in a field cloth, her eyes fixed on the horizon. She waited. At first there was only the wind, then a shift, not of air, but rhythm, a silence that pushed its way forward like a space-making room for something unseen. McKenna rose. The brush just beyond the outer posts rustled once. No footsteps. just weight shifting in the tall grass. She didn't speak, didn't move. The breath in her throat stayed still, and then a low, resonant sound. Not a roar, not a threat. A low rumble, barely audible but unmistakable. It rolled under the earth like a pulse, not a call for battle, a warning, not to Makina, to others, to anything that might try to come closer. The kind of sound made by something guarding what it already claims. Inside the pen, the cub stirred. His ears lifted and his body turned toward the sound. He did not cry. He did not move. But he did not sleep again. The next morning, Makina found more prints. This time, closer, within meters of the fence's edge. The stride was straight, deliberate. The marks overlapped those from the night before. The same lioness, likely. Maybe another with her. Still no visuals. Still no calls. But something was watching. Something knew the cub was here. The vet reviewed the area at dawn and said what Makina already suspected. "She's circling," she said. "But she isn't testing. She's waiting." For what? No one knew. That evening, Makina left the rear gate unlatched, not open, just loose enough to move with the wind. Not as an invitation, but as a signal. If this was the cub's mother, she would decide whether to return. If not, the fence would hold. But if the lioness made her choice, they had to be ready. The cub's survival had been reclaimed once, but if this bond was real, if what lingered beyond the dark was hers, then one more wrong move could mean a lost reunion. Or worse, they could intervene, or they could trust the silence. Makina waited again that night, and though nothing stirred, she knew. Something was just beyond the reach of light, pacing, watching. Not ready to return, not ready to leave. The night was colder than usual. A thin haze had crept low across the scrub, settling like breath held against the ground. Makina stood by the back gate, her fingers wrapped around the latch, unmoving. The prints had returned that afternoon, deeper, more direct. This time they stopped only a few feet from the edge of the wire. No circling, no retreat. Just presence, close and waiting. She checked the cub once more. He was curled near the back corner of the enclosure, head resting over one paw, the other tucked beneath his chest. His eyes followed her as she moved, but he didn't rise. He was calm. Unrested, but calm. He no longer flinched at footsteps or reached for noise. He simply watched. Makina turned back to the gate. She pressed the latch down and lifted the lock gently until the weight slid loose. Then she stepped back, not opening it fully. Just enough so the gate hung on its hinges, resting without resistance. The metal creaked once in the air. Then silence. It remained still. She did not speak. No commands, no signal to the others. This moment was not theirs to manage. It would unfold if it was meant to. The hours passed slowly. Makina sat beneath the edge of the outer post, her back against the fence. The cub did not stir. Neither did the wind. But the space beyond the gate grew heavier, as if the night itself was listening. In the distance, a hyena called, far off, disinterested. Nothing else answered. Then, sometime before dawn, the sound. A single scrape, soft, almost missed. The gate shifted, not swung, not pushed, just enough to move with breath. Makina held still. She heard nothing more, but the air changed. She could feel it. Inside the pen, the cub raised his head. Not quickly, not startled. He blinked and looked toward the open edge. No sound left his throat. He stayed exactly where he was. Footsteps came next. One, then two. Heavy, careful. Grass folded. A twig snapped and was ignored. Makina didn't rise, didn't turn. She kept her head low, her posture non-threatening. Whoever had arrived wasn't rushing. Whoever had come knew what they were looking for. The steps slowed near the gate, then paused. She heard the breath, low, rhythmic, and strong. not panting, not winded, the kind of breath held when eyes are locked on something precious, then movement again, through the gap. Makena lifted her gaze just slightly, enough to see the silhouette pass the gate. Fluid, tall, deliberate. A lioness. Her shoulder brushed the post, and her body followed with no hesitation. Not cautious, not aggressive. Present. She didn't roar. She didn't stop to assess. She walked the length of the enclosure just outside the fence. Then she paused. The cub remained where he was. Not frozen, not afraid, just waiting. The lioness crouched near the mesh, her face only inches from the wire, her head tilted once. A sound, not a growl, not a cry, a soft exhale from her chest, almost a hum, a sound that didn't demand. It was offered. The cub rose. Slowly, carefully, with a limp still faint in his hind leg, he stepped forward. Makena said nothing. The others, now gathered near the far corner of the station, didn't move. This was not the moment for intervention. This was a reunion, or the beginning of something else entirely. The lioness remained outside the gate. She didn't push further, but she didn't leave. The wind picked up just as the sun began to press a thin line across the horizon. The grass moved again. The gate swung once more slightly. The space between them remained unbroken. But something was no longer missing. Something was here, waiting, watching, choosing. The light broke gently over the eastern rise, casting a low, amber glow across the dust and grass. The fence still stood quiet, the gate still loose on its hinge. Nothing had moved for hours, yet the stillness felt different now. Not empty, not tense. Something had settled in the air, as if the night had done its work. Inside the enclosure, the cub stood near the far edge, his legs shaky but upright. He had not cried out, had not paced. He had simply waited. Through the long hours of dark he had stood in silence, eyes fixed beyond the gate. Then, just before sunrise, the lioness returned. No sound warned of her presence. No call, no rustle. She appeared as if she had always been there, as if the night had shaped her from shadow. Her body passed the gate without pause. One foot, then the next. Her chest rose once in a long breath, her ears forward, steady. Makena watched from the outer post, hands folded across her knees. She didn't speak. She didn't move. The lioness did not hesitate. She walked with the quiet certainty of a mother who had made her choice. Not to take back, not to confront, but simply to be here. Her path curved gently, not toward the humans, not toward the open wild, but toward the cub. He didn't run. He didn't lower himself or cry out. He stood, small and trembling, but still. When she reached him, she lowered her head and brushed her muzzle along the fur of his back. A slow movement. Not forceful, not dramatic. A single gesture. Recognition without noise. The cub wobbled but did not step away. His tail twitched once. Then he sank gently onto his haunches beside her. The lioness turned, slow and calm, and lay down beside him. Her body stretched across the packed earth, her ribs rising evenly with breath. She curled slightly toward him, not to shield, not to contain, just to be near. The entire outpost held its breath. No ranger approached, no voices broke the silence. The moment required no explanation. It was not science. It was not protocol. It was something else, rarer than survival, quieter than instinct. The cub rested his head along her foreleg, not fully touching, but close. His eyes blinked, slow and heavy. For the first time since being lifted from the bush, he was still not from exhaustion, but from comfort. Makena scribbled 2 lines into her notebook, hand trembling slightly. She would not log this as fact. Not yet. There was no name for what had happened. Only the visible truth. The lioness had returned. And she had not reclaimed the cub as property. She had not tested him. She had simply joined him. If this was the mother, she had known where he was for days. If she was not, she had still chosen to cross the gate, to lie down, to stay. Either way, the bond was made not with noise or blood, but with nearness. The sun climbed slowly above the ridge. The lioness blinked. Her body did not rise. Her breath was deep, even. She was not guarding. She was not preparing to leave. She was resting. The cub pressed closer. No sounds came from the enclosure for the rest of the morning. No calls, no rumbling, no protest. Only breath. Shared. Continuous. Alive. The sky was pale when they stood. No one approached. No one moved. The lioness rose first, a quiet motion, fluid and certain. She didn't stretch, didn't pace. She stood as if she had never forgotten how and turned her head once toward the gate. The cub hesitated. His legs trembled slightly from sleep, from healing, from the weight of so many days waiting. But when she began to walk, he followed. He limped. The back leg, though mended, still carried weakness. But it did not stop him. His paws pressed into the dust where hers had passed. He did not look back. Makina stood near the inner post, one hand resting lightly against the fence rail. She did not speak. She did not signal. She watched. The lioness walked with the steady rhythm of something that had waited long enough. No urgency. No hesitation. She passed through the gate without breaking stride. The cub trailed just behind, his small frame listing to one side with each step. But he stayed close. He knew the path now. Or perhaps he simply knew to follow. There was no roar, no declaration, no final call. Only the soft drag of feet in dry soil. Only the sound of breath shared between two bodies that had learned to walk again beside each other. The rangers nearby didn't lift their radios. No orders were given. No debates whispered between them. This was not a decision they were meant to make. This was not theirs to question. Some reunions do not come with proof. Some bonds are not explained by biology or maps, but they are visible. And they move. The lioness reached the scrub line first, her tail flicking once. She paused. Not long, not fully still. Just enough for the cub to catch up. When he did, she turned and they disappeared into the grass. Not fast, not slow, just forward. Makina exhaled through her nose, slow and steady. She remained where she stood until their outlines blurred into the golden backdrop. No trail followed them. No escort. No need. The gate swayed once in the rising breeze. The cub had been fed, treated, cleaned, and protected, but not named, not kept. There had never been time for ownership, only a passage between moments. And now that passage has ended. They did not return that night. The enclosure lay empty. A tin bowl overturned near the water dish. A shallow patch of flattened grass where the cub had slept. Makina made one final note in her logbook. 2 words, nothing more. Then she folded it closed, stepped back from the fence and let the quiet remain. In the low light of early dusk, a bird called once from the acacia tree. The wind moved through the brush behind it, and the last trace of prints began to fade. By mid-morning, the light had softened to a muted gold. The dust along the fence no longer carried the tracks of the lioness or the cub. Their passage, brief and silent, had left only faint impressions that the wind was already beginning to lift. But near the gate, where the earth was packed tighter and the shadow of the post lingered longer, something remained. Makina walked alone that morning. No vet, no assistant ranger, just her boots pressing slowly into the earth, her steps paced with care, not because of fear, but reverence. The gate stood as she had left it, slightly ajar, unmoved since sunrise. Nothing had passed through since the lioness and her cub disappeared into the grass the day before. She knelt beside the post. The air was still, warm, but not heavy. There, in the dust, was a single paw print. Larger than the cub's, not deep, not fresh, but still warm. The center pad pressed cleanly into the earth, flanked by 4 rounded toes. The mark of a lioness at rest. Not from pacing, not from flight. A print left behind with intention, or simply by presence. A sign she had paused, if only for a moment. A few inches away, tucked beneath a fold of dead grass, was a strip of bark. Long, curved, and scored with 3 short gouges. Not a claw mark in attack, but something else. A scrape left behind by movement, or maybe marking. The kind cubs often mimic when learning to sharpen, or mothers leave when waiting. McKenna turned it once in her hand, brushing dust from its ridges. The grooves were recent, clean. The bark had not dried yet. It was left here on purpose, or at least not discarded in haste. Then, just outside the enclosure wall, beside the stones where water had once pooled, lay the tin bowl. It was overturned, not thrown, not kicked, just placed on its side. Its surface was clean, save for one smudge of dried saliva along the rim. Licked dry. No food remained, not even scent. The cub had eaten one last time before leaving, not in hunger, but in readiness. McKenna crouched beside it. She didn't pick it up, just watched how the light caught its dented edge. It had been used for days, a small thing, unremarkable in itself, but now it was the only object left behind by the 2 who had passed through. The wind picked up slightly, brushing loose grass against her ankles. From deeper in the reserve, a low bird call rang out. Not urgent, not near. Just a part of the land returning to its rhythm. McKenna stood and left the bowl as it was. She did not close the gate. She did not erase the paw print. Some animals leave quietly, some return without roar, and some, they leave behind only what cannot be carried. A shape in the dirt, a mark in the bark, a bowl, emptied not in need but in trust. And above it all, the breeze moved through the trees, soft, wide, and unbroken.